Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over here we have another person known as Rita. And over there you will all know the person known as Alan Paul. And we are going to be talking about inspiration and how you might make things with or without hesitation, because Alan I think has agreed that just starting and just designing is a thing you need to do. Ultimately, you need to just start and maybe make these games from your heart. But regardless, board game inspiration and initial design ideas, it's what we're talking about. Board game inspiration and initial ideas. That's what we're not going to shout. Hey, good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you, Bez, for that marvelous introduction to the topic.
Thank you, Relentless Glacier, who is just followed us, so is lurking however you are. Thank you for following. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Hello, Nicholas. Morgan, Rita, says Nicholas.
Hi.
Very appropriate. And if you want to take a bath, you can. I'm not suggesting you have to do so, but any time can be bath time. You know what? I might be changing the name of this show. I was thinking of changing it to like Bezzy Beats and Board Game Bladder.
Well, as long as you don't drop your
device. I know it's not been 100 episodes yet, but
as long as you don't drop your device in the bath, that's always a danger if you're watching something. Well, you know, if you have that soap and stuff and you perch your iPhone or other device on the edge of the bath and it just gets soap and you slip it and then it all goes horribly wrong. So, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to maybe listen to the audio, maybe you've got the mobile phone, maybe you've got one of those mobile phones that can even survive. But today we are discussing inspiration, initial design decisions with Alan Paul, Rita Modl, two amazing people. And we are back talking about board games again after a few days of, I mean, yeah, you can't really call a game book a board game. You can't call is a card game a board game? You know, it's all tangentially related, but we are talking about board games because these are people, even if you say, Bez, you've not actually done any published board games because none of them use a board. Some of Alan's definitely use a board. Some of Rita's definitely use a board. So, yeah, even by the most stringent of terms. You've got a wee board. Like, we thought you had a wee board on the Hoppy Top.
Oh, yes, that's right. Oh, yeah, I forgot. That's right.
Yeah, you can have games with...
See, I know your games better than you.
Yeah.
And hello,
Hello,
it's lovely to see you. And wave back. So, oof.
Who wants to start?
I am sorry about all the internet issues. I don't know if people can still hear me, but if at some point people...
No, we hear you. Oh, I think she's freezing again. I can't hear anybody of you. I don't know.
I'm muted. I was muted. That was really stupid.
Oh, you was muted? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, in this part, I'm going to sing. So,
you're going to sing?
So, where is Beth? Where is
Beth?
Where is Beth? Where is Beth? Where is Beth?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yes, it works. Bez has returned. The summon Bez spell
So,
does work occasionally.
what have
There
been
we
some
go.
of your recent highlights? Let's start. Guess that is Alan.
Recent highlights. What have I been doing? Well, not a huge amount actually. Yesterday, we had, because we're in a childcare bubble with my grandchildren. So yesterday we had Oscar, who's 6, around for the day, and we did lots of school things. It's a school day, so you have to be careful. With a 6-year-old, that's quite difficult because you have to get them to sit down and do schoolwork, homeschooling with their grandparents. That's really quite difficult, actually. I wouldn't advise trying it out as an experiment unless you really, really have to. But we did lots of really good schoolwork. So we did some history. Fortunately for me, as a historian, he's got a castle project at the moment. So we did a lot about castles because I like doing castles, having done a game called Siege, which is about castles. So we actually got my old Siege game out and had a look at this lovely. It was produced by Standing Games Publications back in the 1980s, and but it's got a really big board, so you can lay it out and see what a castle looks like in plan, and you can put pieces on it. And if you're 6, you can pile them up and knock them down, and generally do whatever you like when you're 6. So that was good. He learned a lot about the types of soldiers and the bits and pieces of a castle. So that was very, very interesting and a definite highlight.
The essential information that everyone needs to know.
The essential information that everyone needs to know about castles. Absolutely. You can make games out of them, which is essential. And we also played Pokemon in the afternoon as well. So a little bit of Pokemon just before we went home. So that was good.
What kinds of Pokemon? I mean, are you meaning the Pokemon trading card game?
Pokemon trading, trading card game. Yes, the Pokemon trading card game, which he got for Christmas. So, so kind of we have to play that whenever we get an opportunity. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. So that was fun. Yeah, that was good fun. So that's my highlight for sure.
Just out of curiosity, I'm going to ask really quickly: are you sticking with the pre-constructed decks in an attempt to not go down the rabbit hole?
Yes, he's got the Pikachu deck and the Eevee deck, and we play those against each other. For those that know Pokemon, that it's fine, and it's the introductory decks. Yeah, the quick start. We have the quick start rules and things. So we do. We don't do anything too sophisticated. He is only 6, but he's learning quite. He's learning quite fast, and we make sure that. We have to make sure that he can win, and that's a very important part of game playing. But we also have to make sure that occasionally he loses. So he's supposed to learn how to lose gracefully, which is so definitely training him in all these proper game etiquette things. So we shake hands at the start and we shake hands at the end. So we're all proper board game etiquette is what he's learning at the moment.
Also, maybe I don't know how 2021 is going to go, but maybe when we actually get to play a game with people outside of our own houses, shaking hands might not be the appropriate thing anymore.
True, that is.
It might be all about the elbow bump.
It could be. Yeah.
I hope that would happen because I don't this handshaking. I think this is very low.
And hello, Alex. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. And Rita, what are some of your recent highlights?
So the last week, so I have one family I meet because we have a lockdown and we are allowed to meet with only one family. And I played the last weeks. I played for the first time a classic, Terra Mystica. Because I didn't know that before, I always heard of that, and I played twice times, and yeah, what should I say? I liked it, but maybe I'm too stupid for this game, or I don't know. I'm getting not really warm with it. I don't know. And the other thing is, it's really old now, and I think it looks old. So the wooden tiles and so on. It's so when you see board games
Very
at this
green
time,
and brown and beige and not very exciting.
yes. And when you see board games at this time with a lot of stuff in it and 3D models and so on, and now there is the factory and it looks like a church. And this is such a thing. So
this is an old game. This is an old game over here. This is an old game.
Yeah.
1974. 1974.
So I like some of the mechanics, but I think I think it would be not one of my favorite games.
I mean, Javier, and it's lovely to have you as always, says, I did terribly the first time I played Terra Mystica 2, so don't worry. And I think that's the thing with something like Terra Mystica or Tolkien or any of these slightly heavier games. You've got to, give it a few times for your head to wrap around until you actually take in everything. It can be a bit of work, and I think that the joy of it definitely comes from then managing to uncover almost a labyrinth of decisions.
Yeah. So my favorite heavy game last year was Underwater Cities. I loved that very, very much. Such a good game.
And in very recent highlights, Alex just got a package. So feel free to keep us updated with as much or little detail as you would like. Sates loves underwater cities. And what are my recent highlights? What games did I only played we played I think 4 hands of Spades. I've already talked about Spades last weekend. We don't need to go into it more. I consider this to be the simplest trick-taking game that is interesting. I used
to play Spades a lot at school and college. Loads, yeah. Absolutely.
Did you play with the rule that if you go over 10 times, then you actually lose points as penalty? Or did you play with the rule that every over trick is just 1 point and the tricks that you bid for were 10?
I'm thinking of hearts, not spades.
Okay, hearts is the one where you're trying to not get tricks. Spades is the one where you're actually trying to get tricks.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't played spades particularly.
And clubs is the one that was designed by North Star Games and is actually a modern game, same as diamonds. And diamonds doesn't even use the traditional playing card suit to just make it very weird. And so we are having some excitement about Alex's package.
Yes, I've played the crew. I have played the crew quite a bit now. Although our Friday group, we have a few people who don't like card games, or don't like trick-taking card games. So we have to make sure we've got 3 or 4 people who are going to go for the crew. And I've played it a few times. I like the crew. It's good, yeah. Very nice game.
My regulars have already heard me saying this, but for whatever reason, my family was just unable to wrap their heads around the notion of a cooperative game. So that was the major stumbling block. Not the trick-taking, not any of the mechanics really, just the... Sorry, I just saw Xate's message. I'm not going to show that up. But yeah, not... it was a cooperative nature. But yeah, the crew have... So let's get into a brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? And then we'll talk about discussing inspiration and initial ideas, and then the questionably quick questions. I should maybe at this point, kind of just start off saying, yeah, we're going to have a wee recent events, then some brilliant thing, then the questionably quick questions before we get into the main topic. That would have been a bit more professional, wouldn't it? Anyway,
this is supposed to be freeform. It's freeform, Bez, isn't it? It's freeform. We're just winging it.
Today, I wrote a song this morning, so I want to sing a song for you. And this is a song about a brilliant thing. I would like to suggest Alan and Rita, I'm very sorry, but don't guess. But anybody else in the comments, feel free to guess, because, you know, they've got some lag, if you know what I'm saying. So it would be a wee bit unfair for you to all guess. So I'm going to just sing a wee song, just a cappella, and everyone feel free to guess it to get some channel points. So this is my, and we've got some comments. Well, I'll catch up with the comments after my song. This is my voice and this is a melody as the pitch goes up and down. I use it to amuse myself and keep me company as I'm walking around. And as I walk around, everything that I happen to see can be translated into words, I think, and then these words are unleashed when someone says the very things that I feel, the things I think are true. With the rhythm and the pitch and the very real emotion pouring out to you. The words take shape with musical tone, melodic poetry. And when those feelings reflect my own, it's our shared humanity. And that's my wee song about that. Oh, thank you very much. Silent applause, please, just to avoid... So everyone gets one sort of guess in a row, so you can guess multiple times, but you can't guess twice in a row. And I'll quickly catch up with the chat, so before we get into the guesses. So packages are brilliant. I would agree with that, getting things through the letterbox or indeed things being handed to you. Although I would say obviously we need to be careful sometimes. There is a risk of, you know, cross-infection, but generally packages are brilliant. So we've got some questions. Is it Teotihuacan? No, it's not. And then, yep, I'm going to not go into the next ones, but what do you think, Alan or Rita? What do you think I was singing about?
I have absolutely no idea, but there was some, you said something about words, and maybe it's crazy words, but I have no idea.
Okay, there's definitely words involved.
Yeah.
Alan, what do you think it is?
I wondered if it's just singing.
It is singing. It was indeed a song about singing.
I think Nicholas humming is quite good, suggesting that it's a good one, humming as well, but singing, yeah, because you have to have words.
So I have yes, last night I made Xate. Thank you for the feedback, Xate. I do these ones because they're a wee bit easier to do, but I appreciate those. I will get back to them when I'm able. But if you could, and it's definitely not Teotihuacan.
Do you know how we spell that? We spell that Teotihuacan.
It's always tickle a turtle with us.
I didn't say anything about not putting into words. I said can be translated into words. I don't know how much of this will actually go in, but I will just copy paste the lyrics. But it does put the entire thing. There we go. So Xate, you are now an editor and you're a mod person, so if you could do !A and then Aquasulis 1000, I would appreciate that. So, yep. That is now that Xate has all the privileges, so Xate can add. That's weird. That should have worked. I don't know why it didn't work. Sorry about this. Oh, you did the @ You can't do an @ It's exactly like that, but without the @ symbol. But yeah. So hopefully that works.
What does that do?
So what is the answer of the song?
The song was about singing. I don't know why. I set it so that Xate was meant to be able to do things. Sorry, Xate, I think I must have messed up somehow. I will try and tinker with the settings again tonight. But thank you for free. And so so that is all about singing. I think that singing is a brilliant thing because it's a new way to express ourselves, just as the song says, with words and melody combined. And I think that mixture, it's almost more powerful than any of them alone. Nice to say about singing, Rita.
I had singing lessons a long time. Yeah. So I should not say that because now I have to sing something, I guess.
I'm not going to force you, but if you want to, then you are very welcome. Alan,
so what should I sing? Do you have something in mind? So Whitney Houston? No.
You know what? Go for it.
I
will love you from the body. I will always love you.
So I had in Christmas time I was singing a lot. So maybe I sing a Christmas song because I have that in my mind. Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was lovely.
I can reassure people I shall not sing. Although I used to be able to sing a bit, but no, I don't really sing. But I do like music, and I do like singing, like hearing sing. I was listening over Christmas to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is really good to play really loud.
Wow.
It's really, really good. So if you haven't done that before,
morning, Michael.
Do that. Play Beethoven's Ninth, the whole of it. It's about an hour and hour and a half. It's really good. I like that.
612-879-651 is now that is a really weird. It's like a robot, but I'm still going to give you a shout out. That's hello, Michael. But Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So what's it's all about? Let's get into the questionably quick questions. And quick questions. Let's start off with asking, where exactly are you? What time is it? We've already talked about this for the stream. Feel free to tell us yourselves where exactly you are. For me, I am in Glasgow, Scotland, UK. It is 10:24. Rita.
I am in a small village near Munich, and it's 11:30. And in half an hour, I will start to eat because it's lunchtime, and I need food. I really need food, and yeah.
I'm in Warboys Huntingdon. It's 10:25. I'm sitting in my home office, but in my mind, it's the 4th of May, 1471.
Why?
Because I've been reading about the Wars of the Roses. It's the Battle of Tewkesbury,
Okay.
which is a key battle in the wars already. So, but we won't go into that. It's too much. It's not quick. It wasn't a quick battle.
A quick request for Rita: when you are crunching away, just make sure to mute yourself if you can, with the mute button on bottom left.
Yeah.
Scott says Scott appreciates a bit of Beethoven. A couple of years ago, listened to the CBSO. I don't know what symphony orchestra. Play all the symphonies in concert over the course of a few days. That sounds marvelous. Now, I would like to ask, let's keep going round. Why are you joining me to talk about this? Why does inspiration or initial design decisions, apparently City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. That makes sense, given that Scott is based in Birmingham. And lots of people agreeing that it is brilliant, dare I say. But yeah, why does inspiration and initial design decisions matter? Why are you here talking about it, Rita?
So I think it's very, very important to get new aspects of getting inspiration, because this is where we start. So normally I'm getting some inspiration when I'm traveling, but now we can't travel, of course. So I think it's very important to listen to other board game designers, how they start designing a game, or how I can change my way to get inspiration. So this is very important.
Yeah, I agree with what Rita said. It's the start of the whole thing, inspiration, and getting those first initial decisions out of the way. It's starting you on the road, and the first step is often the most important.
So, yeah, I kind of was thinking of this topic because, yeah, I just thought it would be nice to get back into design-related stuff, because Alan and I talked about a couple of marketing-y things the last couple of times we chatted, and whilst that's nice, and it would be nice to kind of just get into, okay, what does this start mean? Also, I had this notion that I will kind of go into a wee bit more later, that I thought, yeah, let's explore that concept. And Rita disagrees with me, which is going to make for a good discussion, hopefully. So if anyone else has any other questionably quick questions for the next 2 minutes, then maybe for the next minute we will get them. Yeah, that's a most pun. I heard that Beethoven was really into sports cars, and that's why he would prefer Elisa. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so Rita, do you prefer sharks or ducks?
Ducks.
Alan?
Sharks.
I'm all about the ducks. You're outvoted, Alan. I mean...
the great thing about sharks is that, did you know that that sharks are even older than trees? Sharks developed 450 million years ago and are not much changed since then as a thing. Whereas trees only appeared 350
I was about to say, you know, sharks don't live that long.
So
they're even older than trees as a group.
And the wonderful thing about ducks is they're very cute, and you can eat them.
You can eat sharks.
I don't think I'd ever argue that sharks are cuter than ducks, to be fair.
Oh no, oh, come on.
They're not cuter than ducks.
Oh yeah, ducks can fly.
Oh
really? Yeah.
I just look, put it this way. I would prefer to be in a room, let's say it was half water, half air, and maybe there was a tiny perimeter around it. I'd far rather be in that room with a duck than with a shark.
Yeah, Yes, well, we didn't have the context there, Bez. I mean, yeah. If I was a killer whale, I'd much prefer a shark to a duck because there's much more meat on a shark. And orcas actually do hunt sharks, but I don't think they hunt ducks. I don't think they'd even notice ducks particularly.
Okay. So, yeah, as Xate says, yep, the word duck is a bit more useful. Ducks can be surprisingly violent. That is a fair point. And so, okay, no other questionably quick questions. Let's us move on. Xate mentions an echo. Has everybody got their headphones plugged in?
Yes.
Have you got headphones in?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Okay. That happened. It might be a connection or something, but Shark à l'orange. Sorry about that, Seats. But on to the main topic. Feel free to comment, ask questions from like follow. We are, of course, discussing inspiration and initial design decisions with Alan Paull, Rita Modl, and myself. My name is Bez. And well, I should have actually asked us all to introduce ourselves. I am Bez, and I made some games, and I've been streaming every day for at least 257 days, I think it is now.
Woo!
However many months that is.
Crazy!
And so,
Wow.
yes, I love games, and I love board games, and I love music, and I love dancing, and I love playing games with people, and lots of things that I can't do. But things that are bringing me joy are walking around early in the morning and comics. Those are things that are bringing me joy. Okay, so Rita, who are you and what is bringing you joy?
So my name is Rita. I'm also a board game designer, and I love going out with my dog. And I'm a huge fan of Netflix and Amazon Prime, so watching series and movies. So that's my other favorite thing.
I'm Alan, and my two claims to fame, I think, are I was the first guest on Bez's shows when she started live streaming, and secondly, I am the father of the famous games artist Vicky Dalton. So, you know, those are my two claims to fame. But I'm also a game designer. I've been designing games for a little while, and it's been fun. And I also read a lot. Mainly about the Wars of the Roses and World War II. But that's all games related, really.
Yes, I really admire and love the fact that even when you're picking yourself up, you do it via other people, via me and Vicky, and it's just the most lovely, generous thing. And Alan is a wonderful person, and we've shared lovely drives. Alex, sorry, I said a couple of minutes, and although to be fair, there is a bit of delay. Okay, we'll have this one final question. What is your favorite thing to do in a tree? My favorite thing to do in a tree is to sit on the branch and maybe even meet someone, which is literally how I met Jess. Do you have a favorite thing to do in a tree, Rita?
In a tree. So I'm not usually sit in a tree, but I'm often sit under a tree, and I love trees because I don't like the sun so much because it's too hot for me. So I love sitting on the trees.
Oh, my favorite thing to do in a tree is to climb to the top as much as I can, get as far up as I can. That was always what I used to do when I used to climb trees. Always try to get as far towards the top as you possibly can. Often at risk to health, but that's unfortunately. I don't think I ever fell out of a tree, although my cousin once did, unfortunately. But yeah, that's what I like to do. Climbing, yeah.
So with
I don't think I do it now. A bit old for that.
No, you could never be too old. Don't say
100%, yes. And you are very much young at heart.
Well, thank you for your generosity.
And yeah, Alan continues learning in a joyful manner. Now you've learnt a wee bit about us. We've heard what the initial topic is. And so let's get talking about that. Now, I personally believe, and I want to just read out what I've written, that, yeah, the first thing that you do when you're making a game is just to make a decision. Like any other points along the way, it's just to say, okay, well, at the start, it's almost like you've got this infinite possibility space because there's infinite games that you could make, right? And so maybe at the start, you say, okay, I'm going to make a game. Well, that doesn't help you very much. But then if you say, okay, this is going to be what the front cover looks like, and you narrow down your possibility space, like front cover inspired design is actually something that Ryan Lockhart does. Or you could say, hey, here's a moment that I'm trying to create with this game, or here's something that the people are going to do, or maybe here's a particular mechanism that I want to explore, or here's, you know, the setting of this game, or the role that the players play, or maybe something to do with the player counts or the components, or some sort of decision-making process that you want to infuse the players with, or whatever it is. You just make some decision about the game, and that is how you get started. And to my mind, there's nothing that unique about the first decision, except that obviously that first decision is going to cut off maybe each decision. Let's say it halves the design space, then sure, the first decision is going to cut it down by the most amount. And even at the end, technically, I would say if I carried on developing, let's say, Kitty Cataclysm, to talk about one of my own ideas for, let's say I was to continue remaking it and redeveloping it, there could, in theory, be infinite ways that it could continue to go, even at this point. But now it's been published, or a second edition, maybe I say, oh, you know what, let's tweak all these things. But those lots of imperceptible changes, if you know what I mean. A lot of the decisions at this point might have a bit more to do with the art, and some of those numbers tweak, we might have realized, okay, well, this not. But fundamentally, it's game design itself is just a case of making decision after decision after decision until all the decisions have been made, testing, iterating. And so I am saying that there's nothing unique about that first decision, except for you need to get over yourself and make that first decision and have the motivation and strength of will to plunge your feet into water, figuratively speaking. Now, Rita, you disagreed with this, you said, so can you tell us why?
So I would not say that it's so hard. So usually I'm not sitting here and saying, so now I'm designing a game and I start with, I want this mechanic. So that was not happen. So my way to start a board game is, I have an idea, and I'm writing it down, and maybe I try it or maybe not. So I have a big box with small ideas on papers. So at some time, when I have nothing to do or something like that, I grab in the box and pick some of these papers and say, what's on there? Oh, that doesn't make sense. What shit? Or, oh, that sounds nice. Maybe I try, and then I pick another box and pick another paper out of the box, and maybe I can combine them. And this is, I'm not making it so hard. So it's I think board game designing for me should be very easy.
Interesting. And I mean, I get that. I'm not saying that it needs to be difficult. And like, I'm still not quite sure where the disagreement is. I'm slightly disappointed. I was hoping for more disagreement.
Can I help?
Yes, please.
I agree with Rita. I don't think I ever sit down and say, I know, I will design a game. I don't think I never do that. Okay. Take an example. When I was starting to design the March of Progress, I was I've told this story before on this live stream. I was reading Clausewitz. Do you know Clausewitz, Rita? You may have read it in German. I don't know. Clausewitz on War, vom Krieg, and I was reading Clausewitz's theories on war, and while I was reading it, it occurred to me that it would be possible to design a game which was a small format game of some type that addressed his theory, which is basically war tends towards extremes. And that was as far as I got at that point. And I read a bit more, and over the next couple of days, more or less, I kind of stumbled into it. I mean, the ideas were there, and I just articulated them more. But I didn't make at some point, obviously, I made a coherent decision to make some components and write some stuff down. So I suppose, in a sense, there was some decision-making process there. But I wasn't saying to myself, I know this can be a great game or anything like that. I was just doing what I normally do. If I read stuff and I have an idea or two, I scribble some notes down, and that may develop into a game, or it may not. It may just sit in Rita's box, as it were, and be a piece of paper. It's only after a period of time, when my subconscious is mulled over a bit more, that it turns into a decision. Oh yes, right. At this point, I will start making the cards for this and seeing if it works. So I never go through that. I'm going to design a game moment. It's much more gradual easing into it than that. It's more like a kind of flow, a gradual flow from one state not designing it into another state designing it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for you two, it's more like you are almost being pulled and attracted by some parts of the world that it grabs you, and you just can't help but be fixated by this, and then eventually that becomes game.
That's a good. The pulled into it is quite a good description for me. Anyway, several times I've had that being pulled into it type of affair. Yes, I like that.
For me, I think it is very much if I sit and say, okay, I'm going to make a thing, I'm not going to say that I always manage to do it, and I couldn't sit and do it, 12 hours a day, for example. But for sure, I think that it's because at decision, I explore it, and then I explore things in a logical way, and then I kind of personally ponder the possibility space. Like with recent make a word search, it's like, okay, these are the kinds of what and write could it be? Okay, it could be exercise, it could be read and write. Okay, exercise and write sounds more exciting, but read and write sounds more doable. And it's maybe not such a big ask for people to flip to a book as opposed to get them to do an entire exercise. And then pondering, okay, what can I do with the sentence? What can I learn? What qualities does this have? How can this, and then what possibilities are there? And then coming up with a few ideas and then picking one of them to go down. That's the way that I personally go. Alex mentions their design conceptualization recently. For those who don't know, on Twitter, if you look up, I want to say AL_canon, and feel free to share a link to that particular tweet if you can. Then Alex has a thing where they say, for every like that this tweet gets, I will share one design idea. Now, these aren't necessarily all design ideas that are going to lead into good games, and it is like 99% the execution in a lot of them, and lots of them, wow, this could turn into a million completely different games. But yeah, having that notion, and Alex says, maybe it's because I really enjoy the process of conceptualizing games, whereas other people like Sates really enjoy the development part. Rita, do you have... Sorry, you were about to say.
Yeah, so when I have the first idea, maybe I start making a first prototype or not. So when I start a first prototype, I really scrabble it. Yeah, I'm not making it on the computer or something, or I scrabble it. And then I try it by myself, and something interesting happens because I have several testing groups, and I try to figure out what they would do, what some of my testers would do or say about that. Because in something, when I do something, I have in mind, so somebody would say, oh, this is boring, or what a boring decision, or something like that. And so I try to the second step after having the idea is, are my decisions interesting? Or is this interesting what happens here? So this is my second thing I'm trying to find out.
If we're looking at inspiration and source, are we looking at sources of inspiration? Because I think that's part of it, isn't it? Part of it. I mean, we're talking about ideas. Ideas. I think ideas for most board game designers or game designers are quite easy to generate. You can have a lot of ideas. I mean, you can get ideas from. Well, I've started a little Twitter series of tweets about game inspiration, and reading is an obvious one. I mean, just reading stuff is an obvious source of inspiration. Now, I read a lot of very varied things, a lot of history, a lot of science, occasional novels, some historical novels. You know, I read a lot of different types of things, and that can be though all of those can be a source of inspiration. The thing is, and going back to what Rita said, I think sometimes you'll have those ideas and they're just things you'll stick in a corner of your mind or stick in a box, and later on they might come back and you think, hang on, I can link those two things together, or I've got this mechanic, this game, this idea that might have been a game idea I had ages ago might fit, and at that point you've got an amalgam of different linkages in your brain together, and that would make me design a game. Because I'm not sitting down and thinking, right, today I need to design another game. I've got so many projects on the go at the moment that it's really a question of which one I'm going to be addressing, I think. But in terms of getting inspiration for making games, there's loads and loads of different ways in which it can be done. Well, a classic one that we always used to have, and I think you've been there as well, Bez, is when we all come back from Essen, when we're all fired up after having 4 days or 5 days of playing games at Essen on the ferry back. We'll play around with bits of cutlery and crockery on the table, and we'll come up with ideas about.
It gets your mind.
It gets your mind going. Yeah. Now, see, we're just experimenting. We're playing. I think that's the key part of this. It's just occurred to me that you can encapsulate all this type of inspiration stuff as play, because when I was reading Clausewitz, I was obviously playing around in my mind with how that relates to game play, how that relates to how humans can interact with each other, simulating or just playing around with these particular concepts that Clausewitz was writing about. And that's I think that's the kind of wellspring of inspiration, if you like, just play. Now, hence we get a lot of our ideas from other games, from other game systems, from the genre that you're in, or the genre you happen to be thinking about at the time. Even if the play is only in our mind, it's still there. And that's how fundamentally I think I do it for my own stuff. And that's why our trips back from Essen are quite important. We missed it last year, which is a shame. And again, using game pieces or potential game components as inspiration, because you can play around with, you can move. I've got I when I went to Canada in the late 90s, I bought a miniature of a wolf mother with some cubs, and a little cub. I've got a dozen little plastic wolf cubs. I thought, I bought those because they were in a shop somewhere. I just bought them. I thought those are probably game components in somewhere. I've no idea what the game will be, and I've got some little dice with North American animals on them as well. So there's a whole load of things that could come out of that. I haven't actually developed any of them because I've had too many other projects to deal with since 1999. But it's just literally playing around with this stuff can lead you somewhere. And you never quite know. I personally never quite know when I start, or very, very rarely, where it's going to end up. I mean, a couple of times I've had experiences where the game has come to me in 48 hours. One was The March of Progress, and the other one was a game I did called Mind Meld, which was look it up on the Board Game Geek, it's there. And those were two games which really took about 48 hours to do the main design of that. That's quite rare. Normally it's much more playing around with stuff and working things out, what works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing. But yeah, life experience really, in a way, is the kind of life experience and play, the well springs of your inspiration for game design.
I really like the notion of allowing yourself to sort of be playful and explore things, and in a way kind of take time off, because living life and noticing things, but also being mindful. I mean, you mention reading, and obviously Rita earlier on mentioned lots of streaming platforms, and if something that you love, maybe you love The Good Place, shout out to The Good Place. I mean, I really adored that series, and I think Alan, you probably watched it with Charlie, but it's maybe some aspects in it, if you're paying attention, will inspire you for something down the line. And walking around, it's not a great thing to just, okay, sure, we all need to de-stress and kind of, not think so hard, especially in these days. But as you're walking around, kind of noticing things, appreciating the way that the frost falls, appreciating the way that the light reflects on something, and then maybe pondering that and allowing your brain to follow these weird thoughts that are so ridiculous. Like, yeah, what if the socks were alive? Would they hate getting holes in them? Would it be like, oh God, you're turning me into this whole sock? Oh no, I'm an old decrepit sock and I've got holes in me. Or would it be like a badge of honor, like, hey, I've been worn so many times, I've got a hole in the toe. And so, that's not something I'd thought about until just now that much, but certainly not something I'd vocalize. Yourself to be silly, allowing yourself to be playful, and when it comes to playing things, allowing yourself to make things around. But I think for me at least, I have to be doing this in a mindful way. Like, I might get some cards down and I might be moving them around, maybe even getting some people together who are willing to allow me to experiment with them and saying, hey, I've got this game, it probably won't work, but can we start playing it? And then by the end, after half an hour, I've changed, 5 of the rules, and it's, it's a similar game, but now it's actually a game, if you know what I mean. And allowing yourself to play and explore and fail and giving yourself permission to people. Rita, any thoughts?
No, I wanted to say something more about getting some inspiration. As I said, traveling is very important for me to get inspiration. And in this time when I can't doing traveling, I have to change my way to get inspiration. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to start painting. So I never painted before, and now I have a lot of painted stuff here, and I just want to do it because I want to see what happened with my mind when I'm painting something like that. So what you said, Alan, you started reading a lot again. It's very interesting for me because I never read, and maybe after this talk I'm started reading because yes, that's really interesting, and that's a thing that could work. And the other thing is, so when I'm walking around, I always try to make other ways. So I'm not going the same way. So I always try to go another way. So maybe I see something I didn't see before, and something happens in my mind again.
Yes, I mean, I mentioned. Well, I think the reading one. I mentioned that because I do a lot of reading of a variety of different things. I mean, the history stuff I find. That's why I've got these little books here. If I go in, what have we got here? This one, History of Chinese Civilization. That was part of the inspiration for Confucius. The pirates one, everybody does pirates games apart from I haven't done a pirate game actually at the moment. That book is a very interesting book. It's actually 25 stories about pirates, but it's real historical pirates who were not the nice, chivalrous, steal from the rich, give to the poor type of people of Hollywood. And that kind of thing, you can read about notorious pirates in there, and you can get ideas for your pirate game if you want from there. And one thing that occurred to me when I read that book was, wouldn't it be an interesting idea to do a more realistic pirate game? And I thought, well, there's a bit of a moral question there, so perhaps I might shy away from that for a minute. And this other one, New Games in Old Rome, that's Rainer Knizia's book, which is originally in German. I think it's a limited edition of English copies. I picked that up secondhand somewhere. And that has, I think it's more than a dozen new games based on this kind of topic. So another thing you can get as inspiration is just a theme. So here we've got his theme is ancient Rome, and he's just done like over a dozen games based on this kind of theme. So reading really does, for me certainly, reading really helps a lot in terms of getting ideas.
Sorry, the off-center didn't quite work for that layout.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
In the middle area.
So Alex says cross-pollination is a great way to get inspired. And maybe it's particularly good when you're doing something with a meditative elements like painting, reading, walking, etc. So I think that, this meditative element that Alex is talking about, I mean, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like you've got to have that space for your mind to wander while you're doing that other thing. So I might be listening to on board games. And the thing about on board games, even though it's ostensibly about games and, it's lovely, but then when they talk about something, then my mind's kind of wandering, and it is taking it in, but it's wandering based on what they're saying. And quite often maybe, if I used to listen to lots of podcasts while cycling around, currently I listen to most of my podcasts while I'm walking around. And so, I'm looking around me, but my mind has that little space to wander, to think, that thing that he just mentioned, I wonder what that would be like in a completely different setting. And, that thing that he mentioned that hasn't been done. But also having a completely different podcast, like Mentally Yours, or something that gives you the inspiration of something else, or yeah, as Rita said, just throwing something on the canvas. Alan, do you feel like you have, do you feel like getting started is easy for you, and along the way you are able to get rid of ideas, if you know what I mean? That you're willing to abandon ideas?
I think it depends how much I've got on. It depends how many projects I've got going at the times. Sometimes I have some form of idea to reverse slightly what you said. Sometimes I have an idea, I really want to do that idea, but I've got to do something else. And it's quite a struggle not to do that new thing, not to start that new project. Is really, really hard. Because you're in that moment of play and experience, and you want to articulate, you want to actually scribble on those cards, make that board and actually put it together. But like for me at the moment, I've got Kingmaker to do. I must resist the new stuff. I must do the thing I'm supposed to do now, which is that's much more difficult than I find than forcing myself to get. I don't have to force myself to get started. I don't think I generally have that problem. But mind you, see, I think the difference is here. I'm designing stuff that I like to do. I'm designing stuff pretty much always designing things that I want to design. If I was,
you completely ignore market's considerations.
Well, pretty well to start with, certainly. Yeah, to start with. Yeah, when I spent 8 years designing a miniatures World War II rule set with a colleague, and we knew at the time we could probably name all the people who were going to buy that game. And we went. I did the whole. We did the whole thing together, and I published it and I printed it, and it's. I think I may have sold 100 or so. I can't remember now. But because the point there was that we wanted to do this, and it was mainly for our group, and we felt the way to do it and kind of get closure, I suppose, get closure on the project is to publish it. So that's why I think we did that. So we've got closure on Mission Command Normandy. Now of course, we've got Mission Command Iwo Jima because we're doing Japanese. So, we haven't stopped the process, but we have at least managed to get that stage out of our system. Yeah. as Alex says, yeah. I might have a bit of. I'm just a compulsive game designer, I think. That's the difficulty. Does that gives you a little bit of insight into how my brain
Yes,
works,
absolutely.
I suppose, but
Yeah, so I have the same problem as Alan. So here beside me, I have a lot of boxes with prototypes I should walk over. But I have a list of new games I want to work on because, and usually I work on the new games because it's a problem to work on something I don't really have fun with it again. So they're all here, and maybe sometimes I have fun. I have fun. I like it to work on it again. So it's like a little bit pressure behind me, but usually I work on new projects because that's what I'm enjoying.
I think that's an advantage. There's an advantage of working with a co-author in this, because hopefully your co-author will keep you on track and not make you distracted by the new things.
Yeah, I've also a lot of games with a co-author, and yeah.
And they're
they're
the same as you, are they? They also want to start new things all the time. Yeah, okay, fine.
No. I'm working on several games.
Yeah.
But so all the projects are, yeah, I'm not thinking about. So.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm particularly thinking of a game that I had signed. I mean, it's been announced. Seize the Power signed with Inside the Box, and a lot of that was, honestly, I could blame times of isolation, which is true. I genuinely believe that if I had been able to continue going to Fridays, then I would have continued doing stuff. And I actually had a brief exchange with Peter this morning. Oh, by the way, shout out to them. I believe they have launched a Kickstarter already for Alba, which should be the biggest ever game book by number of sections, which is quite exciting. And just because it seemed quite interesting, I invited the writer to come on to the show maybe next week if they're up for it. But anyway, but yeah, with Seize the Power, it was a really difficult thing because sent it and it was like, yeah, we can playtest it. Okay, I've enjoyed playtesting. Maybe I will enjoy playtesting on Tabletopia. And for whatever reason, for me, it's just a real mental barrier. I'm having trouble doing that. And I said, look, I'm just not able to be involved at all right now, even though, yeah, the contract gave me certain benefits for continuing to do work, but it gave me the possibility of not doing work. And it's like, yeah, I
think there's a whole different discussion there. There's about persistence and getting over the hump and all. I think there's a whole different. We stick with inspiration, initial stuff. I think we might be.
Yeah, but I mean, it feels like this
more positive.
Yeah, you're right. Let's make it a wee bit more positive. But I mean, there is something to do with keeping focused. There is something to do with when do you think it's appropriate to, when do you actually prioritize a new idea? Let's put it that way. Let me ask Rita. Rita, when do you prioritize having a new idea?
So what do you mean when? What do you mean with when?
So yeah, Alex says having this notion of I'm going to continue working on this and I need to keep working on something is one side of the coin, and then the other side of the coin is you want to at least get things started. So at what point do you think it is better to start a new game compared to just working on the older games?
So it depends on which fair is next. And if I go to that fair and I have appointments to that fair, so that gives me a little bit of pressure. And also on the fair, I meet other designers, so which I do a co-working project. So that's giving me a little bit of pressure. And also, yes, that's so in this time there are no fair, and playtesting is very hard. So I can playtest but very slow, and I try to work on games which I can playtest. So it doesn't make sense for me now to work on a game which I can playtest now. So I usually take the projects I can work on with.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy in that. I don't think I've started much new in the last year or so. Well, to be fair, Kingmaker is a massive project, and that's taken up most of my time. So I think I would start something. I would say that every single show. I would start something new if I've got nothing which I kind of need to bring to fruition, need to finish off. Rather, I've got nothing I need to finish off, and it won't mean I haven't got any other projects, but I may find that none of those projects I mentally feel are a priority. Then I might well decide, well, I want to do something new. I think part of the reason I started the Pocket Campaigns series was because I have a lot of projects which are big projects and much bigger games, and I felt, well, at this time it's easier to handle smaller ones. It's quicker, and there's well, partly there's definitely a market for them, but it's quicker to develop and publish smaller games than the larger ones, and sometimes they're just as interesting as the big ones. So I've kind of, I'll keep the larger project still going, and obviously I'm committed to Kingmaker. But in the meantime, I can start these other smaller ones. I mean, we were talking the other day about a Wargame L deck. So I have some notes. I have some notes on the Wargame L deck. So I mean, so I am starting, but that hopefully that will be a relatively small project. Hopefully, but I'll do that. I'll only fit that in if I have time between other things. So I was almost going to say, as relaxation from doing the big stuff, I'll do a small game, which is a bit strange, really. It somehow feels less effort to do the small stuff than the very large things. No, it's not. That's not quite right. It's less daunting. I think a small game is less daunting, and so if you're feeling a bit off color, you can delve into. I mean, if I'm feeling a bit off color, I can't go into the depths of the next bit of the Kingmaker redevelopment, but I could look at something smaller, like a new Pocket Campaigns game or a bit of L deck design. So there's a huge amount of addressing my own mental state in there as to what I do next. This is completely completely irrational. All of this is completely irrational. It's not. There's no real.
I get it. I get it 100%. I totally understand. And let me just say that I wasn't sure. Okay, do you actually have pages of notes when you mentioned it's on the Twitch? But I'm really happy to see that you legitimately do. I really appreciate a lot of what's been said by Rita, that it's kind of opportunistic. Okay, that word's got negative connotations, but it's a case of who am I going to see? What fairs are going to come up? What appointments? And having something to keep your head together. And I definitely was very much inspired by this. I think between Nuremberg and Cannes, I don't know the exact dates, but I made a game that two publishers, because I made appointments with them at Nuremberg, and then they both took a copy of this game, but they both told me, sorry, we can't really test this thoroughly because we want to test it with kids. And then, yeah, testing with kids is problematic in the current time of. And that's another thing, like Rita mentioned, circumstance. What can I personally try? What is possible to publish right now? What could I actually finish? What could I work on? And so being mindful of what you're able to do and not feeling like you have to do all the things all the time. And having a variety of projects, yeah, I totally get it. And we've got a few different comments. I don't think I popped up this one. I'm just going to, sorry, Alan, I will pop myself here. Nicholas says, I also get that feeling of pressure to get back to the old stuff I put aside for other things. I've got partial prototypes and sketches piling up over here as well. I think that I've identified that I have a testing bottleneck that keeps me from getting on with some designs because I don't get to test them correctly. And I end up starting more stuff in the meantime. Whereas Alex says, I guess I've always been in the position that I don't have to finish anything that isn't at the easy stage still. And for sure, if you're a designer and you're giving it to a publisher, then theoretically can be as involved or as uninvolved as you want to be. And any smaller publisher will probably extend that invitation to you. A larger publisher will probably say, we don't want you to be more involved than a certain amount. And Nicholas has got a wee thought for an Eldec shogi, consonants versus vowels, which gives you the directionality needed of the player pieces. I should see what the possibilities are there. And so, for sure, yes, sorry for missing an earlier one of your comments. Oh yeah, Nicholas says the earlier comments was, I reckon that sometimes we keep ideas around that we thought were good when we got started, but as we keep trying stuff and failing and getting better, the new shiny ideas are also better ideas. So it's natural that we go for them, but we still like the older ones. And yeah, I read through that, but I didn't pop it up on screen for very long. And
I think there's an important point there, and I think we do need to differentiate between that ideas and initial design decisions, because yes, I think that I'm not sure that there's an idea which is necessarily better than another idea per se. It's your initial. Well, maybe there is. Okay, yeah, maybe there is. Certainly, having more original thought is good. Having more innovative things is good.
Okay, here's an idea. Let's make a worker placements game. That's a terrible idea.
Well, I don't know that it. You see, I don't know that I.
Well, it's a boring idea. It's an uninspired idea. There's nothing within that idea to inspire you to make anything original. You've got to add something to it.
If you've never addressed worker placement game design before, it probably is quite a good one, actually. No, but the point I'm making, which is this illustrates it quite nicely. But until you make an initial design decision, and this is where you were right, Bez, earlier, the initial and it. Partly right. I wouldn't want to stress it, but you're at least partly right. Making an initial design decision is how you do that worker placement thing. Maybe you've had this idea. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a worker placement game? Yeah, fine. But if your idea of how to do the worker placement is unique, or at least more interesting than an implementation is more interesting, that's what makes it a good idea. So translating that idea into something really interesting. Can I give you an example? It's almost like a counterexample in a way. The one way of generating ideas is to write a little scenario of what you want the player experience to be. And I was thinking about, and generally you'll start with a theme for this first. I mean, I did. I was going to do a game on the German invasion of France in 1940, the May 1940 big campaign. Notoriously difficult. It's notoriously difficult to design a game on that because everybody knows what happened. So if the French know what happened, they'll just avoid doing what the French did. So it's quite difficult. So what I wrote was a little mini scenario about what I wanted the player experience to be like. What should the players be deciding? At what particular point? What's the scale of the game? I'm not going to go into detail. So I wrote that out. And that was my inspiration. That's an idea, and it's still lying there in one of my notebooks somewhere. And I haven't gone to that next step. I haven't made an initial design decision about what to do with that idea. And until I make that design decision about what to do with that idea, all it is an idea. It's not any form of starting game implementation. So there is a boundary between an idea and an implementation of a game, and it's quite an important one. And it does go back to what you said, which is you have to make some initial design decisions. Now, I just contrast that with the March of Progress and my Mind Meld game. Those two games, when they came to me, I had the inspiration for them as the ideas. They came associated with the mechanics and how to implement it, and so I wrote it out. So it was a more rapid flow. Bit like a kind of waterfall, if you like. whereas with the 1940 game, I'm still up the river and just in a side pond somewhere with no flow at all. Whereas these others, I'm rushing down a waterfall, and then there's hopefully a river, and it goes out to the sea, and you finish. You see.
So a fun fact: yesterday I started work on a worker placement game.
You as well?
Yes, because but just for fun, because I decided for me that worker placement is my most favorite mechanic. And I started and tried something. Of course, you have to do something new with that mechanic, otherwise it's boring. But I started it just for fun, and maybe I'm working on it again or not. So I can't tell you, but this was something normally I don't use mechanics to start. So this was something special for me, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's a whole discussion about whether you start with mechanics first or theme first, isn't there? I don't know if that's a separate discussion. Well, we've done it before.
I mean, so have you wanted to comment on, your talk about specific implementations, talking about the crew? Well, trick-taking games existed and cooperative games existed, but no one had ever thought about a cooperative trick-taking game before. Or if they had thought about it, they certainly hadn't gotten one to the point of mass production. And again, like, I say it's like a zombie. It's like the zombie call rather than brains. It's like the crew need to play the crew anyway. But yeah, I just think that there's so many ways to start that having mechanics or components, mechanics or theme shows my bias there, I guess. Clearly, I'm not a theme first person, but mechanics, components, art first. Like even theme first isn't that specific. It's like, do you go for the setting? Do you go for like you're trying to represent something, like the way that thing moves? It's like something about that theme that you want. And do you want this to be a simulation? To me, it's again, maybe this comes by, maybe I don't want to call it more deliberate, but certainly I'd be like, okay, sorry, this sounds like I'm insulting you both, because I'm going to say maybe in a more mindful, more deliberate way. And I don't know how to push this, but it's more, I need to make that concerted effort, maybe, to say, okay, this is what I'm making. Oh, wow, that would be good. And then my mind consciously thinks of, oh, that would be interesting if this and that. And then how about this and that and the other thing? Oh, wow, okay, that's coming into the game. That would be interesting. Oh, what if this weren't part of the game? And then, yeah, you have an idea. And to me, and I guess that's, like, the word idea is such a vague thing. But to me, an idea for a game is, and I'm not going to tell off people for using it in a different sense, but to me, an idea for a game is, okay, like almost a design document. Like, this is a statement of intent. This is roughly how the game will play. This is who you are, what you're doing. This is the interesting bits about the game. Then it is a fully fledged idea. That to me is, if it was like, oh,
yeah. So you're taking it to that next. You're taking it to that next stage. Well, what I would think of as the next stage. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I do. I see that. So, in a sense, the original idea before it becomes a game idea is just, from my point of view, if we're looking at my example, I want to do something about, I want to do a game in the 1940 France campaign. That's just an idea. And it's not until I do some form of design brief that it's a game idea. But then what does that mean? Because I actually wrote a design brief for that one. Actually, I wrote the objective. I wrote about the player experience I wanted to generate with that idea, but it didn't involve, for example, anything about mechanics. My design brief was design a game with that as the theme. I had some idea of scale. I had some idea of the kinds of what kind of experience I wanted to give the players when they were making decisions, but I didn't have any actual mechanics at all at that point. And I still considered that to be a game idea. So do you think that it has to have mechanics? Do you have to have genre? Do you have to have mechanics for it to be a game idea? I don't think so.
That this is a very interesting point. What you say, it's starting with a briefing for yourself. I never tried that, but it could be very, very interesting.
That was an exercise really, because I was doing something quite different. Normally I go with theme. I either go with something about theme or something about mechanics, and I start from there. But this time I thought what I'll do is I'll try to go from what I want the player experience to be, which is, in a sense, that's kind of backwards in the sense, because when you start with mechanics, you're doing the nitty gritty, aren't you? When you start with theme, you're doing research and stuff or whatever, and maybe the kind of the structure almost emerges from that. But if you start with the player experience, I want people to be able to make decisions of this type. Then you're kind of trying to back design the mechanics from that, and it was an exercise. So I hadn't done it before, but I think it's certainly a very, very viable way of doing it. I think. Mind you, I didn't get very far with it because I had other things to do, but I'm going to go back to that and see how that works.
Cool. So this is very interesting. So after this talk, I'm starting to read and making briefings for my own. So
I mean, you asked whether something would be a game idea or not if it doesn't have what you're doing. And look, I don't want to gatekeep on what is an idea or not. I want to say, part of me wants to start a Twitter thread now of probably terrible game ideas. And like one of them is, let's make a collectible card game where all the text is in 1 point text. And another terrible game idea. Hey, here's a game idea where whoever loses has... Actually, that's a bit too dark. I'm not going to say. It was going to be the ultimate real-world ramifications. I'm not going to go into that. But that's a bit too dark for the show. But, sorry. Yeah, I don't... In all sincerity, I don't want to be like... this is not an idea, because sure, if you had an idea for a theme, like it could be like a game relevant idea. I think like Odin, who said in a Twitter thread, Odin Pong, or I think it was a Facebook thread, we were talking about game ideas, game themes that people would like to see, and then Odin said something about foliage reclaiming buildings, and based on that I made a sort of area control roll and write called Flowers Over Towers, which is part of that anthology. And then it came full circle because I forgot who'd actually said that, and then it was the person to whom I was pitching it. So it's, who would have thought, but it was actually an idea for a theme that they were still quite interested in. But to me, it's an idea for part of a game. It's not an entire idea for a game. I guess it's an idea for a theme, or you can have an idea for a mood, or you have an idea for, what experience you're trying to do. But until you have an idea, until you kind of ponder that initial idea for the experience that you're wanting to do, until you're like, okay, what are some possible ways to make this work? To me, it's not yet really an idea for a game. Like, I guess it kind of is, but I don't know. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter how we use these words anyway. I'm just going to...
I think it helps. I think it helps best to tease out some of these things because it gives us a bit more of an insight into how our brains work and how each other's brains work, which is always helpful. One of the things we didn't mention, which comes from what you were saying, is another way of getting ideas is brainstorming. It's a classic way of getting ideas. Now, the point about brainstorming is that you never reject anything that somebody says. So if you have this crazy idea about the ultimate sacrifice, your ultimate sacrifice idea, that may trigger somebody else to, not trigger in that sense, it may stimulate somebody else to think of something that fits well with a game design, So brainstorming is supposed to be no holds barred. So you can have really bad ideas and it can lead to something really good. And that's fine. So yeah, but I do agree. We don't need to get too hung up about the definitions, but it can be helpful to discuss them occasionally. Yeah, for sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these interesting conversations.
So I would say I like bad ideas. So because you can switch into something new, into something special. So I think the worst thing you can happen is you design a game and it's not fun. So, but weird ideas are, I think, is the beginning of something big.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like, if you actually go all out on making something terrible and are watching and listening to this later after the fact, hello, Board Game Gran, it's lovely to have you, even though you're just popping by briefly. But to catch up with the comments, there's a lot of talk about crew. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I'm not going to try and unravel this lover spat or whatever's going on. Yep. Nicola Straccia says, just as theme first has parts like setting or the role that the players are, or to say components first is itself a part of physicality first, which also includes ergonomics and so forth. And I think this is a really interesting point that, yeah, maybe for inspiration for the game, and I guess that like maybe I consider that to be more like the inspiration, and that inspiration might be, okay, I'm going to make a game about the religion, about the interaction between the Abrahamic faiths, because I understand that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are all connected. Let's explore that connection via the format of a game, because games can do serious things. But then and then you start to think, okay, then you get into the notion of who are we, what are we kind of doing, what setting is it, are we scholars who are investigating this, is that what the best setting is? And so I think Nicholas makes a really good point that you can be inspired by either the overarching theme or like some big thing, or you can be inspired by this teeny tiny point. And I think that's a really, really fascinating point that I'm really going to ponder on. Do you have anything that you quickly want to say on Nicholas's points right now, Alan or Rita?
Yes. Is it me? Well, I'm going to. Okay.
Yep.
I think that it goes back to what I was talking about, having a brief. And I think that in a lot of ways, most game designers, although they may not write one, and some do actually write a formal brief for themselves, like I occasionally do, they'll have one in their head anyway. And that kind of will have some parameters around it. So you'll probably have an idea how many players do we think is going to be. I mean, it might be very vague, like 2 to 5, or it might be 1. It'll have some idea about what the thing might look like on the table. So a vague idea. Has it got a board or not? It might be something fundamental. How long do you think this game should be? And that might be, it's only a 15-minute game, or no, it's probably a 2-hour game. And all of those could be very, very flexible and change during the design and development process. But we've probably got some kind of parameters, which I would describe as a brief, even if it's not explicit. At that point, when we've got some of those vague parameters, I think we've got a game idea. So I would argue that my 1940s scenario experience, I think of it as a project brief, really. That, even though it hasn't got any hard and fast mechanics in it, that's still a game idea. But just saying I'm going to do a game about May 1940, that isn't really a game idea. You've just stated a theme and said it's going to be a game. That's not a game idea. That's just
it's
saying
an idea
what you'd like the theme to be. It's so vague. It can't be translated into any form of game because you've not got enough. You've not got enough information to actualize that. And I'm resisting using the word ideation. I hope you noticed that.
Do you have anything to add, Rita? So just carrying on, because there's lots of really interesting chat. And so Alex mentions a lot of my initial design work is trying to marry a novel game mechanism to a really strong theme where possible and building it up from there. And Nicholas approves. Michael often starts with a brief. What do I want to do in the game? What do I want to achieve? How do I want the players to feel when they're doing stuff? Alex mentions Jeff Engelstein, who talked about his experience first design process. And I think that Nicholas says, understanding why you think that an idea is bad can bring you closer to understanding what you consider to be a good idea. So, for example, 1-point text might be a bad idea, in which case maybe you have text at a size that you can read. But conversely, giving credence to Alan Paull's statement that there are no bad ideas, relentless glacier, and thank you for joining the conversation. I love this point. I think there's merit to Bez's 1-point font game. Maybe the game includes a magnifying glass and only one player can look at the cards at once. It's a really old school way of doing that, but that actually sounds potentially fun. And yep, Javier has a question that was answered, and yep, that was I mean, I certainly would think of these sorts of things when I'm starting, and certainly between Nuremberg and Cannes, which was my last, what I'm going to call genuinely productive time, very much who's my target audience and how many people are going to, I was actually basing it on how long should this game be, who's going to be playing it, need to be playing it. Okay, this is the kind of game that I want to be. Okay, and then Nicholas has a lovely example. What about when I hold a little wooden fox in my hand and I say I want to make a game with this? Is that the component, the wooden piece, or the theme? What would fit for the size and the attitude of the fox will inform the mood of the playing situation, as well as the fact that it's just a fox. Yeah, that is I really love that, Nicholas, and I'd love to quote you if you're happy for me to use that in something, because this is a really interesting example that you're up with. Alan, do you have anything to reply to?
I totally agree with Nicholas. I think Nicholas is absolutely right there. That's spot on. I think the other aspect where I think we probably have, at least in the back of our minds when we're starting out, and I think is the engagement of players. I think Michael mentioned it. It's what's the player experience like? What might it be like? And I mean, certainly key, I think, to the early decisions is how will you engage players with this, and how will you engage players with this? That's absolutely key, because without addressing that, you're just making something which is literally boring. And we don't want to do that. So addressing player engagement is very, very important. And there's some interesting things about that, though, which I was thinking about the other day, and that is looking at wargaming. Why are World War II games the most popular war games? I mean, the answer is that many more people seem to be engaged with that theme. So, or other similar themes to that. I mean, I have a friend who I played a lot of games with. He would play virtually anything. He would play as long as it was World War II or World War One. A similar game, very, very, very similar game, set in the English Civil War. He couldn't engage with it at all. He just thought it was absolutely rubbish. Didn't want it at all. He thought it was too complicated. Now, he was playing really complicated World War II and World War One games, but he could not engage with a game set in the English Civil War. So engagement is a very personal thing, but you have to address that with your game idea, I think. So that's why, I admit the magnifying glass one is a really good one. I like that as an example, but you still have to work. It's not a good idea until you've got the idea that people are going to engage with this method of reading the cards, and they may do. There may be a group of players who will engage with that, and you'd have to address that.
So I would like to talk about the length again, because the only thing when I think about the length is when I want to do a heavy game, because so I started doing heavy games, and that I have in mind, and it's important for my work, because I have to say to myself, so this is a heavy game, and you have to work on it very long, because you have to test a long times, and trying to use several things in the plan, and so on. So this is the only way when I think about the length. So otherwise, I usually don't think about the length. So when I make a children's game or a family game, I don't think about the length.
So you're saying that you would think about length. Do you mean that you think, okay, it has to be at least however long, like at least 45 minutes or at least an hour? Or do you mean that you want to keep in mind, okay, this is a heavy game, but I want to still keep it less than 90 minutes? What do you mean by you think about length in that setting?
Yeah. So usually when I work on children's games or family games, the length is always nearly the same. But if I start to make a heavy game, I can work it through my head, and okay, we have several rounds, and every round should take this long or something like that. So it's really another way to work on this for me. So it's not the same as when I work on a family game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for me, if I'm working on I guess, even if it's like, okay, this is the number of cards, I want this game to take more than 2 minutes, because less than 2 minutes, it's not so satisfying. And maybe, okay, how long is... Yeah, if I say, okay, this is a game that I want it to be maybe and Odolani says, we started 102 minutes ago talking about length. Well, welcome to the busy board game bladder, I guess, because this is the way it normally is. We normally go on about 120 minutes. It's actually generally fairly close to that. But welcome, and lovely to have you with us. I think that it probably is about time for us trying to start trying to wrap up. Nicholas mentioned that for Alan's friend, the new information brought by the theme seems to have heightened the cognitive load, trying to internalize the war conflict as well as the gameplay and rules, which wasn't a thing for the historical ins and outs. That's just a hypothesis. I don't know if that's at all correct.
That sounds very plausible. Yeah, that sounds very plausible. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that what we've realized is that not only do different things inspire you, not only can you be inspired by reading the world around you, and sometimes you're inspired by the moments, which is what happens with Alan and Rita. You just notice something and then you're attracted to it and then you're pulled in, like you've been magnetized. Or maybe for me, it's more of a case of digging and being a caver and then kind of saying, okay, which direction am I going? Okay, I'm going to explore this cave. Okay, now I'm going to explore a bit around here, trying to search for that mine. And that's almost how I feel about it, if I could metaphor. But yeah, officially recapping and wrapping up, we talked about Terra Mystica, ducks, sharks, how to start, you two being pushed to start, like it being an attraction rather than sitting and deciding and pondering. Alan loving the reading, maybe thinking that's okay, realistic pirates, is that something that you would want to make a game of? And having maybe there's a little bit of responsibility, because maybe if you're making something that's a bit more simulational or a bit more realistic, then you want to do a bit more research. But allowing yourself to play and explore and try things, both in when you're taking in content to see what's out there, but also when you're brainstorming and just trying and exploring freely. We talked about painting, about just throwing something onto canvas and going into that meditative state where you're just enjoying it and finding that it's a new thing that you can do. We talked about being motivated. What motivates you? What makes you compelled to do things? Maybe working with someone else. You're both people who just are attracted by the new and shiny, so you don't have much stringent work, or maybe you have a fair coming up or an appointment, and it's like, okay, I need to finish this thing to show this company, or I need to finish this part so I'm not letting my design partner down. Talking about a circumstance, what am I able to try? What can you get play tested? Talking about having a variety of projects on the go. Alan talking about an LDEC war game and having a simple game, having a more complex game. We talked about the fact that maybe there's no bad idea, and then I tried to give a counterexample of one-point text, and then suddenly, hey, well, what if that's the whole design feature, where suddenly the one-point text is a feature, not a bug, and someone needs to look really closely with maybe it's even smaller than 1 point. Maybe you've got to have a tiny little microscope. I don't know. Maybe it's literally microscopic text, which is painted. That would probably be way too expensive, though. We probably need to stick to normal printing technology. We talked a bit about what an idea even is, and we had a lot of really interesting points from Nicholas, where we talked about just as theme has so many aspects, setting, immersion, like physicality itself. You can talk about the components, the ergonomics, the way you see things, and yeah, frankly, because I'm doing the wrap up, and I will give you an opportunity to react, but I'm going to mention once again Nicholas's lovely point about holding an object in your hand and saying, I want to make a game with that. That can inspire you in a million different ways. The physicality, the components, the theme. But the final thing I want to say, and again, before we have some final words, is I don't think it matters how you start. It just matters that you start in some way. And just start and then keep going. And if you find out along the way that, hey, this idea wasn't good, or this game idea wasn't good, well, maybe you can go back to that original genesis and carry it on along, or maybe try something else. And it's okay to give up on things. It's okay to stop doing things. But if you want to make a game, then just start and carry on. And eventually you'll find a game that you've carried on and then you've finished. So Rita, final words and response to what I just finished up with.
Yeah, thank you so much for this discussion. It was so interesting for me. I never thought that, because maybe after this show I said, maybe I started to read, maybe I started breathing myself. So this is very, very cool. Maybe I just start having more weirder ideas and then trying to find out what's going on. So this was very, very cool. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been a really good discussion, and thank you, Rita. You have a different perspective, which is really good. I was tempted to say I ought to take up doing some art as a way of getting my creativity going, but I'm notoriously bad at art. But maybe that
only abstract art.
Yes. Maybe I ought to do a bit more. My wife would be pleased if I did, because my wife is our artist. Of the two of us, for sure. A couple of things we haven't mentioned, just by the by, we didn't mention IP. So intellectual property as a way of stimulating ideas can be one, and of course other people's ideas. Shamelessly nick other people's ideas and use them for your own purposes. That's my great lesson. We are always on the shoulders of giants. So yeah. That's my final thought anyway.
100%. And so that is that. And if you want to find me, you can find me at Stuff by Bez most places. Stuffbybez.com is my website. Stuffbybez.blithardle.com, twitter.com/stuffbez, instagram.com/stuffbez, twitch.tv/stuffbez. I am streaming every day at 10 a.m. UK time, and tonight I'll be doing an additional stream. YouTube.com/stuffbez for the old stuff, and stuffbybez.com/discord. If you're not already part of my Discord, go there and it will redirect you to the Discord, where you can talk, you can share pictures of cats, or you can talk about music or games, or just have pleasant discussions and get to know people and get to know friends. I am going to have a game jam probably in mid-February. Now, where do you like to be found, Rita?
So I'm on Instagram, and it's called Rita Modl, or Rita on Fire. That's my name. And I'm posting a lot of stuff there about board games and also about my new podcast. I'm having a podcast where I play games which have games in it. So just have a look at it. It's only in German. I'm sorry. But yeah, usually you can meet me on Instagram.
And Alan, I have remembered to add your email address now.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm on Twitter as benthamfish. I am Alan at alanpaul.co.uk, and we're also Surprise Day Games all over the place, and hopefully Instagram as well soon when I remember it.
Alex says it's inspired him to something, and yeah, if you let us know what you're finishing, then we will be happy to keep you accountable. We can, or Alex is going to finish something. And yep, thank you everyone. Sorry, I maybe popped that up too quickly, but Nicholas, thank you for the lovely words. Thank you to my amazing moderators. Thank you to everyone who has put in over on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. Obviously, Twitch has the best discussions going on, but I know some people just don't like signing up for things, so it's fair enough. That's why I continue to multi-stream. It's been lovely having you all. Thank you, most importantly, to the wonderful Rita Modl and Alan Paull. Thank you all. And now I want to say over to you, up to you can share anything you want to. So is there anything that you want to share? anything that you've got. Oh, I totally forgot. Yesterday, I said that I had an ambition to send off my invoices, and I was actually really struggling with it until the way I decided to send off the invoices was by how outstanding they are. So I did it in chronological order. I know that sounds obvious, but having that thing in my head, okay, this is the order that I'm going to do, that's allowed me to just focus on one at a time rather than being overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I've got to send out 5 different emails. I've sent out that email. Okay, now I've sent out this email, and then did it one at a time, and I managed to do it, and I'm really proud of myself. I know it's a small thing, but I was happy with myself. And today I'm going to try and get things a wee bit more organized for the stream, because this year so far I've not had things run quite as smoothly as I'd like, but that is my objective. Now for everyone else, and whether you're watching or whether you're watching it after the fact, feel in the comments on YouTube or Facebook. But yeah, for Rita, Alan, what are you up to? Rita.
What I'm up to, so first I want to say I'm always drinking a lot of water here, so you always have to drink a lot of water, so that's very important. Yeah, Alan?
Anything else? Or
Yeah. Anything else, Rita? No. Okay, that's fine. I am looking forward to finalizing the latest version of Revised Kingmaker and asking people to do some blind playtesting for me on Tabletopia. So that's going to be quite tricky, because I need people who can blind playtest and know Tabletopia enough to do blind playtesting. So if you know anybody like that, let me know. I have got a large number of potential playtesters, but it's still, I think, a relatively small minority of people who know Tabletopia well enough to do it without somebody there to hold hands. Which I'm ever hopeful that we can get some blind testing done. Still, that's me.
I am very amused by Alex's commands. I feel like I should put it in as a command now. Just hydrate and stretch. Why not just put them in as commands? People don't need to use channel points for that. But Alex is finally putting Christmas decorations back into the attic. So we have finally reached the end of the season. I wonder, when is the 12th day of Christmas? It starts on 25th, doesn't it? So it would
the 12th is the 6th. It's the 6th of January.
Oh.
But there is a movement. There is a movement now to go on to Candlemas, which I think is something like the 2nd of February.
What, to keep your decorations up until 2nd of February?
Apparently in medieval times, which is a very large period of time, obviously I don't know the exact details, they would keep Christmas lights going until Candlemas, which was, I think, is the 2nd of February. So you always have options to keep the celebrations going, you see.
I mean, I know Alex is saying finally because it's after the 12th day, and that's tradition, but you do you. Like, do it in your own way. And honestly, if I were to give my number one beginner, I feel like I should start a hashtag like beginning board game design tips. That feels like too long as a hashtag. Beginning board game design? Is that short enough? I don't know. But like, I feel like my number one tip for beginner board game designers is just, like Callan says, like, just do it. But it's like, whatever you do is okay. Like, whether it's within game design, whether it's elsewhere, like, you don't need to make games with the intention, okay, especially your first thing that you're starting on, it doesn't need to be intended for mass production. It can be something that you think, okay, I want to make a worker placements game. This is probably going to be something that has already been made, but I just want to do it to go through those problems myself, to try and understand the ramifications of changing something. And then you start it off and maybe lean into it. Lean into, okay, let me make a game for our group. And it's just a game for your group. You have all the pictures it's based on in-jokes. It's based on people. And that's a lovely thing. We should have more bespoke games as gifts. I think that would be a lovely thing. Same way we have paintings as gifts. It's not like, oh, we need to mass produce these paintings. And I mean, paintings are inherently, but like, let's consider photography, something that can be very easily mass produced. And you could say, okay, well, I'm getting this lovely image and I'm making it gorgeous. Okay, I'm going to put it up on the internet for loads of people to see. Conversely, you could do something that's of one person. And I know someone who did a photo retouching of their parents, like old wedding. And whatever you want to make, that's totally fine. And yeah, obviously, I'm not sure what Odolani means by that's different in different countries. Obviously, whatever you want to do is okay. There are certain legal limits, and don't be, injuring people or doing horrible things to people without their consent. But yeah, it's Board Game Design 101. Javier is saying that should be the hashtag. Can you have numbers in a hashtag? I don't know. I feel like you might not be able to. Oh, okay. But that is us. And if anyone else has anything else that they want to share that they're up on, and apparently Alex's weren't even up, they were just cluttering up the landing. Yeah, that's not great. Yeah, I mean, we'll forgive you. Hashtag game design, play lots of different games. Yeah. I mean, Alan and I did a thing on... Will that dragon meat thing be put on YouTube, Alan? Do you know?
They did say that it would. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I've not seen it, but then they would. I thought they might tell us, but you never know. That was a long time ago now, wasn't it? In the internet age,
it wasn't
quite a long time
so
ago.
long. It was just December. I mean, people, especially right now, and especially when things are being essentially run as this is the best we can do. Everyone's at the end of their tether. Let's give them some time. But streams that are coming up tonight, 8 p.m. UK time, I am going to be playing some simple word games. We are going to be playing Nano Muckle, which is trying to make an 8-letter word. If you manage to make an 8-letter word, you score the best possible score, and you are amazing. Otherwise, if you've scored a 5 and you try to use all 8 letters as best you can. On Wednesday morning, we're meeting Jess Metheringham. On Thursday, we're discussing remaking a game with Benji Corless. Friday is the Friendly Friday Forum. Saturday, meeting Dick Rensima, also known as Dutch Yoda, before we start our fortnightly mentorship, and so forth. That's what's happening for the next few days. If you have enjoyed this, if you think that other people would enjoy any of those future things, then please feel free to share, spread the word. And this is your final chance for a final word while I'm deciding who we raid and setting it all up. Alan, Rita, any final words?
About board game designing, just start and have a fun.
Yeah, just make games. If you want to be a designer, just make games.
If you want to be a board game designer, just make games. Just make games. That was terrible. I'm sorry. But
No comment.
It was kind of meant to be. Anyway, I am not going to even try to justify that. So, yes, that brings us to the only thing left to do, which is in a wee bit. If you're watching this live, Idle Michael is streaming and in a show of support, we're going to go over where Idle Michael is designing a gem miner roll and write. So if you want to check that out, go there and maybe send some love hearts or something along the way, which you can copy paste something if you want. Otherwise, there is only one thing left to do. And that one thing, as always, is to say bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. And now's the point when I think, should I actually end it, or should I just let it end? And because it's going to automatically end in about 3 seconds. Bye-bye.